Welcome, it's Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined today by Don Knabe. He is a member of the Board of Supervisors in Los Angeles County, and you recently traveled to our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. All five of you, was it?
All five of us.
Wow, so 5 members of the Board of Supervisors in the largest county in the nation, representing 10 million people. If it were a state, it'd be larger than Michigan.
Right.
So that's some real firepower going to Washington to make your voice heard.
We do it annually, at least once,
Right.
sometimes twice. I think it's important. Obviously, when you have a budget of $27 billion and you have the majority of that are mandates either by the state or federal government, particularly federal
Right.
government, about 80% of that's pass-through dollars.
Right.
It's important that, one, we let them know what the concerns are. 2, that we appreciate a spirit of cooperation. 3, that sometimes they need to get beyond the bipartisan.
But do they appreciate the size of this county? Think about it. If LA County were a state, it'd be the 8th or 9th largest state in the country. But because you don't have that state title, you know, it's like, well, Arkansas is a state and LA County's not.
Exactly, but I think the bigger issue is we're too far away from Washington. If we were the largest county in Virginia, as the size that we are, I think it'd be a more daily contact. So that's why it's so important that we get our message back there. We visited with all the members, not only the LA County delegation, but other members of delegation of committees. We visited with Health and Human Services on the 1115 waiver, the issue that we've talked about so much here.
Affordable Care Act.
The child sex trafficking issue.
Congratulations, by the way. Yes.
We understand recently it got out of everything, finally got over the hurdle that we talked about last time on a 99-0 vote.
Yep.
So met with the VA on the homeless issue as well as contracting with Rancho Los Amigos.
Right.
So we're trying to, met with the White House folks
Really?
on the various issues, met with the Secretary of HUD.
And I follow your Twitter feed and the other members of the Board of Supervisors, and I saw you met with Senator Boxer, Senator Feinstein, several members of Congress. Was there a theme, though, when you went? Were you talking about?
Yeah, and actually we have a handout when we go because we try to pick 5 of the top issues that are impacting the county. Obviously, the most important one is the waiver right now as it relates to health care. The other big number that they can't relate to, but they love, particularly the White House, was how much our success on their ACA program. Because, you know, whether you're for it or against it, some states haven't even started trying to participate. So our numbers, when we say, hey, we've registered 500,000 people, that's a huge number. So on the flip side of all that, our bigness and largest and anybody but California, our success also carries a message that we're not wasting dollars. We're trying to be partners with the federal government.
What other issues? You said there were 5. To the extent you can tell us, what were the 4 other issues or the highlights for you?
Well, like I said, the primary issue was health care. The other issue was the LA RICS, the interoperability system on the communications that we've talked about previously on here. The sort of, had some issues, but we're trying to rework that. So we met with the FCC and the NTIA in the Commerce Department. I met with the Deputy Secretary of the Air Force on the Air Force Base issue, which is another huge issue for us here in Southern California. Obviously, our immigration issues are important. So those are the primary issues that we met with.
And on the immigration question, you talk to a Democrat, you talk to a Republican who represents the state of California in some way, likely they will be supportive of immigration reform. But outside of the state, it's not as clear.
It's not as clear. The impacts aren't as dramatic.
Right.
The impacts are not, that's the thing we run up against. You may see on television a period of time this very powerful chairman of a very powerful committee. They can't relate to 10 million people.
Yeah, they're from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Right. They can't relate to someone like myself who has 2 million people in their district, and they'll say, no, y'all go back. I'm just taking care of my little parish, kind of a thing. So it's always interesting back there. It's always exciting to be back there in the sense that that's where it all happens. I will have to say, Brad, that I found it not totally congenial, but much better than it has been in the past. There are some underlying things that are happening on a bipartisan basis. I think they're paying attention to their 18% approval rating that the folks have said with the frustration. We met with Majority Leader McCarthy. There's
a
Californian about the drought and the issues impacting the state and the nation. I'm obviously a very powerful position. But it wasn't the finger pointing. It wasn't the Republicans saying the Dems are doing this or the Dems are not saying the Republicans. Yeah, every once in a while, my bill's hung up here, but finally, like the sex trafficking, the drought issue.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of things going on across the country.
Let's talk about the drought, because the drought obviously is on the top of mind of every Californian. We know that the governor recently imposed mandatory restrictions, 25% reductions based upon 2013 levels. In many large cities in LA County, Long Beach, one of your centers, the city of LA, our target is 16%. So we're doing fairly well in this county. But I'm wondering, what was the focus of the discussions as it relates to the drought in DC, if at all?
Well, it was really paramount in the minds of McCarthy and some of the other members that are impacted directly by it, or the members of Congress that are impacted with the agriculture industry, those kinds of things.
Mr. McCarthy represents Bakersfield.
Right, and so that the real issues there are maybe not the impact of the 25% reduction that we in the county have to be, and as well as our water saving devices, as well as trying to recharge the ground and doing all the kinds of things we have to do. But they're looking on the 30,000 foot level and trying to narrow it down as to what alternatives do we have. Do we have to do desalinization?
Right.
What can we or can't we do on a bigger scale? Because it's not just one drip at a time anymore.
Right.
These issues are significant.
Last year at this time, maybe a few months earlier, we know that the Republicans had been looking, and the Republicans in the Congress had been looking to ease some of the endangered species restrictions, and that caused a lot of tension between Democrats and Republicans, and there was finger pointing, fish over food, and are we past that?
No, and I'd probably be one of those. At what point do we rationalize the fish versus people? I mean, if we get to the next stage in drought, as we understand it, there are going to have to be some tough decisions.
We're at the next stage, I would argue.
Well, 25% is a lot, but 25% is not 50%. 25% is not 50%. A 50% reduction, you'd probably start having hotel closures, reduced hours of restaurants.
Well, let me ask you,
all those kinds of things.
You represent 2 million people. Some of them, a nice number of them, are in unincorporated areas, so you're kind of like their mayor, because they don't have a mayor. What are you hearing? What are your constituents saying to you? I mean, 2 million, you got, 5% of the state of California.
I've really found, as you talk about the drought and the kinds of things the county has done and the kinds of issues we've been dealing with since 2008, so we sort of got out ahead of the curve. We've been very communicative with our constituents, countywide, not just my district, and I really feel a spirit of cooperation. There are people looking. You drive around. I mean, I got off the freeway, and you come in an area like this sometimes, and you see all of a sudden you see yards being dramatically changed to drought resistant. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be beneficial to everyone. I don't think we're ever going to go back to sea, but you see now we have a massive plan in the county as it relates to our golf courses on turf reduction, and they're they're having plans now coming into every facility to see what kind of grass we don't need. And other golf courses are doing it. Parks are doing it.
It is remarkable, I must say. I pulled out the chart that was issued by the state board, the state water board. It's 9 or 10 pages. I'm flipping through this, and it was setting forth the conservation standards, 8 to 36%. I mean, as a Southern Californian, I felt a sense of pride that LA and Long Beach are only at the second level up at 16% reduction. That says a lot. Something's working in this region. If LA and Long Beach, the city of 4 million and the second largest city of 500,000, I mean, basically half our county is doing something right.
And they are, and that's what I'm saying. You really see a spirit of cooperation out there in the people. When I was in Washington recently, I was telling someone it felt good that I felt like I'd spend just a little bit longer brushing my teeth and not feeling guilty about pouring a glass of water out. I mean, seriously, you think about it. I mean, in our house, we've been taking boat showers for months now.
His name is Knabe. He's a member of the Board of Supervisors in Los Angeles County. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter California Edition.